My wife and I have been married for 6 years. In our daily lives, everything is going well. Our daughter, who is 2 years old, is with us. My wife is a very pretty woman. She has soft skin, a small, well-groomed chest, long legs, and a beautiful shape. I really loved her. Now, let's get to the point. My spouse worked for a sick business. Why do I say that? Allow me to explain. You couldn't call this business good, because it was clear that the relationships between workers were careless and unprofessional. How do I understand this? To be honest, I didn't want my wife to go to the business event. I had a bad feeling that something would go wrong. Her shopping for a dress, shoes, and even perfume began 2 weeks ago in order to get ready for this event. She picked out the scent herself. My wife told me I didn't have to smell it even, though I didn't want to, that she would only need the smell until evening and then take a shower to get rid of it. She picked a dress with a very low neckline. As a joke, my wife told her female coworkers that she loved me but also wanted to make an impression on them. By the way, they were betting on who would look better. They bet a whole case of pricey wine. At 4 in the afternoon, the team started celebrating the new year, and it went on until 11 at night. That's the new way to do it. I also had no reason not to believe my wife. I could always count on her. I said goodbye to her on December 30th, and a cab picked her up. She told me she couldn't stay because it would hurt her professional image when I asked her to stay with Hope. Her boss didn't like it when she said no, and it could hurt her job. Like me, she made a lot of money, even though I was a teacher. My income was good and stable, but it wasn't as high as hers. I told my wife she could relax and have fun when she left. She had been to parties put on by her company before, after all. I usually let her go, but this time I felt empty, worried, and like something bad was happening that threw me off. Around 10 o'clock at night, I called my wife. I had to yell over the party noise and loud music to be heard when she answered the phone. I was curious about when she planned to go home. When asked, she replied that they had decided to keep the party going and that she would be back in 2 hours. In the middle of all the noise, I kept hearing someone tell my wife to dance. The time we agreed on had passed, but my wife still hadn't come home. Her phone was off when I tried to call her. She didn't come back until the next day's evening, 4 hours before New Year's Eve. She also looked a little drunk. She kissed me on the lips with all her heart. I always felt like bad things were going to happen while she was gone. It kept me up at night to wait for her. And every 15 minutes I called her family, friends, and neighbors. I only had the number of one coworker's friend from work, but it turned out that even that wasn't possible. I knew I would call the cops if she didn't come back by New Year's. I took our child to my mom's house just in case. I asked her right away why her phone was off when she walked in. It was off, and my wife said she didn't know why I hadn't called her. She faked surprise and widened her eyes. She said it's possible that the phone turned off by itself. Right after she quickly took a shower, she ran to the kitchen to help me finish cooking. In truth, though, I had almost everything ready already. All that was left to do was dress up the salads and mix them. Even though she had only been gone for a few hours, I couldn't stop wondering where she was while she was working in the kitchen, but she kept putting off talking to him until later. It made me feel better, even. Though my wife tried to make me feel better by talking about love, our child, and the future. She started to kiss me and crawl up on my lap. I could tell she was forcing herself to do it, though. She had never been this bad before. I found out my wife was hiding something. I think she got a little tipsy after having 3 glasses of champagne. I didn't drink much when midnight came, I just took a sip from the flute. That was it. My wife told me around 2 a.m. that she was very tired and was going to bed. I didn't wake her up early in the morning. I chose to go to the place where I knew they were enjoying the holiday. I turned off my phone on purpose while I was driving. After an hour, I got to the place. Good thing it was January 1st and not. Many cars were on the road. The head of security was a pretty woman in her 50s who I found. She told me that yes, that company was celebrating the new year while we were talking. That being said, they didn't go home because they had already paid for the meal and the hotel rooms. They would not show me anything but the camera footage because they said it had private information on it. But there is a saying that the castle gates will always be open for donkeys carrying gold. I found the security guy and paid him to show me everything I needed and copy it to a flash drive. I told him I would keep these movie materials for myself. I did see my wife. It wasn't like she was really drunk. I saw her make her way into a room while a man held her waist gently. The two of them were intensely kissing as they stood in front of the room. They walked into the room I saw. After an hour and a half, I saw the first man leave the room and then come back with another guy. Because the camera was in the hallway, I could sometimes only see part of what was going on in the room, and only showed the bed and a small part of the room. Even though I only saw pieces, it was enough when the door was opened. The first man I saw my wife with left, and then another man came in. I then saw my wife with both of them at the same time. They drank champagne, talked, and then went back to what they were doing after their sexual experiences. All night long, this went on. The guys left the men's hotel room for my wife around 11 a.m. the next day. One man left first, and the other stayed behind and left an hour later. After an hour, my wife came out of the room herself. The last shots were already taken outside, as my wife and her coworker got into a cab. As I drove home, I was filled with anger and rage. A few times I almost had an accident, but I didn't stop. I got home late at night. It took all day and night to watch the movie and download the episodes we needed. When I got home, my wife was mad at me, but as she looked at me, her anger changed into worry and hurt. She asked, with anger in her voice, where I had gone and why my phone couldn't be reached. It wasn't someone calling me, so I pulled out my phone, turned it on, and told her I hadn't turned it off. It must have turned off by itself. Like I didn't understand, I said that I had also wondered why no one had called me. I saw my wife's worry and confusion for the first time at that moment. I saw that she was thinking about something. To be honest, I asked her if she would like to tell me where she had been all night. My wife told me that she had too much to drink at a business party. After the party was over in the evening, they left. The cab driver let her sleep, and her friend took her to her own house. It was very sick for her during the day, and she couldn't leave her coworker's house. She spent the night at her friend's house. My wife told me she was telling the truth. Fear filled her voice, as she told me it was the truth and she had no reason to lie to me. I told her I thought we should go see this to thank her and wish her a happy new year. My wife told me she wasn't ready, she was sick, and she needed to put on makeup before going to her coworker's house. Also, her coworker said she was going to visit her parents on January 1st and stay there until the end of the holiday weekend. That's why I asked my wife directly if she would like to watch a new erotic movie with me in which she played the lead part. That was the exact moment when my wife was really scared. She said she didn't care about what she watched. I went and got the laptop, then moved all the videos from the flash drive to it. When I went back into the bedroom, my wife was crying softly. The recording began, and I set the laptop down on the bed in front of her. When my wife started to cry, she lost her words and said that she didn't want this and that she felt abused. That's when I told them to call the police. Of course she said no, and told them she didn't know how it happened, but she had too much to drink. She begged me not to jump to conclusions and told me she loved me and our child. She told us that we had a child and that he shouldn't grow up without a dad. She told me that I was a good husband and man. She loved me because I made her happy in every way, and she still does. It was painful. When I looked at this woman and heard her rambling defenses and promises of genuine love for our family and child, it hurt deep down. I was filled with furious anger. I began to yell. How could she have known that she would drag another guy into her hotel room? Why did she do it when there were two guys involved? Did she ever think about me, my family, or our child? And were all of her business events like this? My crying wife started pleading with me to forgive her and start over. She said it was a one-time mistake that she would never do again. She didn't want me to go away. She wanted our child to be raised by both of us. She insisted that our child should have both a mother and a father. She said that the child shouldn't grow up without a father and should live with a full family. She said she was ready to die for what she did. She couldn't picture her life without our child and me. That's when I did it again. I screamed and asked her, what in the world was she thinking about in that hotel room? When she went to that business event, what and who was she thinking about? They knew ahead of time that she wouldn't be back on time and that everything had already been paid for. Why did she lie to me from the start? Who is the guy she walked into the room with? Who is the second person who joined them afterward? My wife stopped crying and just sat there with a blank look on her face. She said she knew what was going on and that she didn't want this to happen, but it did. She was ready to do anything to protect our family. She told me and our child that she loved us very much. She couldn't picture her life after I left with our child. I took out a bag and started packing my things in silence. My wife just sat there. As if frozen, they stared at one spot and didn't say a word. When I got to the door, laughing fits broke out. That she begged me not to leave, to stay, to forgive her, and to kiss her. I almost tore my jacket when I tried to free her from my body because she was so tight on it. I left. I called my mom and asked her to take care of the kid until the holiday was over. I told her not to answer any calls from my wife. It was also very important not to give her the child under any circumstances. After being alone for a while, I said I would explain everything. In fact, it would be better for my mom to leave with the kid and visit family. I reserved a hotel room, placed an order for food and drinks. As I watched TV in bed, I drank, ate, and thought about different events in my life. Then I fell asleep while drunk. I woke up during the day because of the phone. My in-law's dad called to ask when we and his daughter and granddaughter would be coming to visit. I told them that we couldn't come, which was all I had to say. When I got home, I told my wife I was going to file for divorce. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I could never forgive her. She was a cheater in war, and she should leave my apartment because I bought it before we got married. Regarding our daughter, I would go to court to make sure she lived with her father because of her mother's bad behavior. I walked out, turned around, got in my car, and drove off. I was no longer stopped by anyone. The other two people she worked with, I found them. As I learned more about them, I found out that they were both married and had kids. As payment, I sent their wives a pornographic movie with my ex-wife and their husbands. I wasn't interested in finding out what happened to them afterward, but I didn't know either. I had to start over. That tells the story. Leave your thoughts on this situation and what the couple did in the comments.